Hello my beautiful bookish friends and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a tag that I don't think I've ever done, and if I did it a really long time ago, so I don't even remember my answers to it, and that is the Booktube Real Talk tag, I think is the official name. But basically it's just 7 questions for people who are on Booktube. Did I say Book Talk? I meant Booktube. I keep doing that now. But it's the Booktube Real Talk tag, where it's people who make bookish content. You just answer some questions about the community, about your expectations, and how you feel about certain books. So some of my answers might be lengthy, so let's get started. So the first question is, what is something that nobody told you about Booktube before you started your channel? And to be quite honest, that would be that it even existed. I stumbled upon Booktube because I don't even remember what I was looking for. I had gotten a bunch of books from Barnes & Noble and I wanted to do a haul about it, and I wanted to see if people were making like book content in any form, or if I was just going to be like shouting into the void about these books I got. And turns out there was a ton of people talking about it. It's like one book haul and was like, okay, I'm gonna make a Booktube video and see how it does. And like, it didn't do any better or worse than my regular videos, but I was just really surprised to find out that there were a ton of people talking about books, because it's something I had wanted to do for a long time. Now granted, I wasn't watching book content, but I wanted to do this kind of book club thing to get me reading again, and then I kind of was like, no one's gonna watch that. And little did I know there were a ton of people already doing it. And that's the other thing too, is when I started watching, I was watching really small creators, because that's just the way it ended up working. That's who I found first with what I was looking up. And it turns out there were a lot of bigger creators, and a lot of people I know have grown quite a bit in the last 2 years since I started my channel. But I felt like I was getting in on the ground floor of this really like niche subject, and turns out that I was not at all. I was late to the party once again. So I would say, yeah, just that it existed and that it was an like established community on YouTube. This question is, what is your take on the typical Booktube content? So this is TBRs, hauls, wrap-ups. I know people like sometimes get tired of the TBRs or the wrap-ups, but honestly, they're kind of what started the community, so I don't think they're gonna go anywhere anytime soon. But I think it's hard when people have, you know, I mean, sometimes I've done 15 book wrap-ups, and that's a ton. And, you know, for some people, 1 book a month is a lot, let alone reading 15 or 20 or sometimes 30. Like, some people read a ton of books a month. And I think that sets an expectation, so then a lot of people feel bad when they're looking at these big TBRs that people are doing. They're like, I only expect to read like 2 books. Or they look at these wrap-ups and they're like, I didn't read it all this month. Like, I lost the game or whatever. Like, it's not a competition. So I feel like some of the original content people have kind of strayed away from just because they feel like there's an expectation or there's a competition of some kind to reach this certain level of reading, when it's not. It's just like, read however much you can or want, or none at all if you just like hearing other people talk about books. But I think like hauls, I think, are super important, especially for new authors and new releases, because how else are people going to hear about them? No one really does. Well, I'm sure there's creators that do like 1 book reviews. I just don't think a lot of people want to see that really long form content when it comes to reviews, because now, especially with TikTok, people want to see short snippets of content. So doing a wrap up is kind of like doing 1 big long TikTok where you can talk about all the books and give you the synopsis, and you can do the, you know, your rating. I mean, especially if people use Goodreads, they're going to want to know your rating for things. So, you know, it's hard to say. I think people want TBRs. I think they want that kind of stuff. I personally love when my TBR and wrap-up days come, because it's predetermined content for me. I don't have to think about it super hard. They are really easy to make, at least for me anyway. But you can make them creative, and I think a lot of people are looking to that. You know, you have Book Roast, who does the TV avatar. Some people do other game boards or spin a wheel. I personally theme all my TBRs just so they're not so cut and dry all the time and me just reading a bunch of synopses at you. So yeah, I think it's good, and I think it's content that you need if you're trying to establish a strong community, because it's very accessible content. Anyone can make a TBR or wrap-up video if they have a singular book that they're looking to read that month. The next question is, what is an assumption you had about Booktube before starting it? And like I said at the beginning, I guess my assumption was that this was a new, niche, unheard of kind of video on YouTube, and obviously that was very, very wrong. And then I guess after I started watching a little bit and started my own channel, my assumption was that everybody was reading the same like 7 books. That's all it seemed that people were reading. Everyone was reading Caraval, The Night Circus. Well, I kind of watched some older videos, so those were the ones I saw, but I'm trying to see other ones that people read a lot. Truly Devious, everyone was reading that when I got on. I don't know any other ones that I see off the top of my head, but there were like a ton of books that everyone was reading at the same time. Oh, The Raven Boys, the Grishaverse was super big. All these things that people still really read and rave and talk about, but that was like at its peak when I looked. So I was like, apparently I have to read fantasy in order to be relevant. Now, granted, that kind of made me buy The Bone Witch, and it's one of my favorite series ever, so I'm really, really okay with it. But yeah, I just felt like you have to have a ton of money because you have to be buying all these books. You have to have white bookshelves, which I fell for and purchased. But I mean, I guess I really love these. I wanted bookshelves anyway because I had always had very closed off bookshelves, and I wanted to display all the books I had, and now I have even more books than I did then. But yeah, I guess I just assumed you needed like all these things, and you really don't. But it certainly does help your channel if you do have them. Next question, what is something you have done that's actually helped you grow your audience? I don't know. I think probably not being in my college dorm helped a lot just because my quality of videos are better. I don't know that decorating the shelves has helped any. I mean, my shelves are very me. They're very like Disney and Funko Pop, and all the books I like are displayed. I mean, I only read stuff I like. I've gotten a couple hype things, but I don't know. I think just kind of being a little bit different with some of my reviews and stuff, and I'm not somebody who gets arcs. I'm not somebody who gets paid to review books or gets sent a lot of free stuff. So I'm very honest with my stuff, but I only have 404 subscribers, so it's hard to say what has helped grow my channel. Maybe just doing Booktube in general has helped me grow my channel. So next question, what is a common mistake that you see new Booktubers make or ones that I made? I think just buying into the idea that you have to buy books all the time. I wouldn't say it's a mistake I made, because I do love all the books I have currently on my shelves. But I think the idea of like using your library isn't talked about enough. There's when I got in, there was a lot of drama about consumerism and people overbuying books and like having 4 versions of one book or like 4 editions of the same book. Like it was at that point where a lot of people were like doing minimalism, and unhauls were becoming a thing where people were clearing off their shelves. So I think my assumption going in, thinking that I had to buy books in order to be relevant, or for my opinions to matter, or for people to want to hear what I have to say, were huge. And I think maybe people overthinking it a little bit, that you have to read a lot of books for people to find you relevant. You don't. I think if your opinion and your personality is really super strong and you can talk about, you know, one book for 45 minutes, which I feel like I definitely could, but I rein it in, then people are going to want to watch you. If you just bring yourself to the table, I think a lot of the time you'll do better than you think. Like, you don't have to say you like certain books because everyone else in the community likes them. I think having that dissenting opinion a lot of the time is actually beneficial because people want to hear the real reviews and they want to hear why people didn't like stuff as much as they want to hear that they did like stuff. Yeah, I mean, like, Booktube is much more chill than like makeup videos, so I would say it's hard to compare the two. But mistakes, I mean, I guess you don't need as much good lighting and as much of a good camera. I mean, you obviously want decent quality, but like, I film on my phone with one light. Like, you don't have to have a full-blown setup. So don't think that you can't start your channel or start posting reviews because you don't have those things. Also, you don't need to have Goodreads. A lot of people have a decent following on Goodreads and it translates over to their Booktube or vice versa. I don't use Goodreads at all. So yeah, you don't have to make a Goodreads account. So the next question is actually, I feel like it's a loaded question, or kind of like, it could get very, people have strong opinions on it. And that's, how do you feel about working with publishers and sponsorships? Here's the thing. I believe in making money any way you can. If you have a special interest and you are just immaculate at book reviews, I think someone should be paying you to review their book. I mean, if you think about it, how do I phrase this so it doesn't sound bad? Put it this way, if someone's sending you their book for free and they want you to talk about it on your channel, especially if they have specifics, like if a publisher sends you a book and says, you don't even have to read this book, we're going to send you this book and you have to say X, Y, and Z about it and talk about it for this length of time, they should be paying you because they're taking up a portion of your content. It's sponsored content. They should be paying you for that because you're providing them a service, and otherwise it's just free advertising, which as a book channel, you are automatically giving any book that you talk about. If you talk about Home Before Dark, you're giving Riley Sager free advertisement, especially if you love it, because you're saying, hey, this book was great and I think you should read it. You're giving Book of the Month free advertisement if you don't work with them. You're giving every author a little free advertisement. Even if you only have 2 subscribers, those 2 subscribers are going to hear you talk about a book that maybe they haven't heard talked about. Maybe you give a great review, someone gave a terrible review, but your friends trust your opinion more than the other person. So they say, you know what, I'm going to go buy this book. You have now, in a sense, given that author or publisher or whoever money in their pocket because someone listened to your opinion. So I think absolutely people should accept sponsorships as long as they still keep their integrity of their channel. Don't take a sponsorship and then say, this book was great, and then 2 days later you send it off to Goodwill because you hated it. Like, if it's a review, I think you need to be 100% honest. If publishers are sending you free stuff, I know so many people who get sent free books and they don't even read them and they don't ask for them. It's unsolicited free books. I think that's on the publishers for being, you know, not saying like, hey, we're going to send you this book. Do you want to read it? Yes or no? And I know some people have just stopped working with publishers altogether because of that, because they feel it's wasteful and an impact on the environment. I can respect that. But if it's something where the publisher is going to send you the book and they're like, we need you to talk about this in this amount of time, like you have 3 weeks to talk about this book, they need to be paying you. If they're like, hey, we're going to send you this book, just, you know, get to it whenever, then maybe not so much, because maybe you don't pick up that book for a year. Maybe you don't pick it up for 6 months, and then by that time, they're already talking and advertising about another book. So, yeah, I don't think you should just give free advertisement to anybody. Now, obviously, with the way Booktube works, it's going to naturally happen, but if someone is specifically asking you to talk about their book or, you know, say certain things about their book, they need to be paying you, and your review needs to be honest. Is Booktube dying? I don't think so. I think maybe if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago, because that's just when I started, maybe like a year ago, I would have said, actually, If you would have asked me 2 years ago, I may have said, yes, it's declining. It's on the downfall because people just aren't reading. But then COVID happened and people started reading again. People started wanting book reviews. Everyone was inside. And when you're inside, eventually you will get bored enough if you're not a reader that you will read something. So people started reading. They started looking for books. They started ordering books to their house. I'm sure Book of the Month subscriptions went way up during the pandemic. Like, it's becoming popular again to read, and it's becoming cool to read again. Like, when the Hunger Games and Divergent and all that came out, if you were a reader, it was like you were so trendy. You had your finger on the pulse of what was hot and new. And then that fell off after some really terrible movies were made of a bunch of books. And then, you know, now it's kind of coming around again. There's not as many books being turned into movies, and the ones that are either really good or just god awful. So you kind of have that hype of talking about how horrible they are again. But now with Book Talk, I think it kind of got a resurgence because people who did Booktube are doing Book Talk, and then, you know, the cross audience platforms, is that what I meant? Cross-platform audience, whatever. You get people from Book Talk watching the people on Booktube now, and vice versa. So I don't think it's dead. I think it's actually getting a bit of a resurgence right now. But there also hasn't been a book that's come out this year, I don't think. I mean, last year was Addie LaRue. Everyone was reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This year, well, I shouldn't say this year. I should say 2021. I don't think there was one book that I can put my finger on that everyone was reading. Like, everyone was getting sent it. I'm looking and I'm really not seeing anything on my shelf, because I mean, I have Addie LaRue right here. She's behind the Oogie Boogie car. And I mean, like, Home Before Dark was really hyped up, but for 2021, I can't think of one singular book or series that really everyone was reading that we hadn't already heard about. So maybe that's why people think it was dying. But I mean, anything by Colleen Hoover was flying off the shelves again this year. So I guess you could consider that like the book that everyone was reading. But again, that's helped the resurgence. Everyone reads Colleen Hoover now. There's a lot of people reading romance. There's a lot of people reading YA. It's just Book Talk has kind of taken over, and I think it's going to boost Booktube up again, because at some point people do go back to the long form content after watching so much short form for a while. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. I think Booktube is just fine. So those are all my opinions. That's all my real talk. I don't think anything was too controversial. But, you know, let me know your opinions down below on anything I talked about, and I will see you guys in the next one.